Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished speakers. Welcome to what I'm sure will be a very interesting and engaging session. I will start by introducing myself. I'm Asha Devi. I was born and bred in Birmingham and have been very fortunate in my career in Arup to have traveled the globe and returned to my home city here in Birmingham. I'm delighted to be chairing this session, Birmingham Future-Proofing Our City, which is part of the London Real Estate Forum Investment Summit. If you have not had a chance to attend the series of live sessions this week, please do take the opportunity to watch the recorded sessions. In this session, we will outline Birmingham's new future city plan, examine the role that high growth and knowledge-intensive industries play in driving city growth, and how this can be fostered to create a sustainable growth. I'd like to start introducing our panelists. Councillor Ian Ward is leader of Birmingham City Council. Welcome. Beck Seeley, Managing Director from Development Europe in Lendlease. Rob Valentine, Director from Bruntwood. And Simon Delahunty-Forrest, Development Director for Birmingham City Council. We'll start this session with Simon presenting the Future City Plan, followed by a panel discussion. And we'd like the audience to participate through a Q&A session as well. So if I can ask the audience to please submit some questions to the panel at any time through the Q&A function. And we promise we'll get to them at the end of this first half of the session. If I can hand over now to Simon to start his presentation on the Future City Plan. Simon.
Hi, Asha. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. And it's with great pride that I've got this opportunity as both a Brummie and an employee of Birmingham City Council that I can share with you our vision going forward. As a city, Birmingham has always embraced change. You know, we're a city with a wealth of knowledge, skills and creative potential across our communities. Over the last 30 years, our city has undergone transformation, attracting unprecedented levels of investment and development, providing jobs, opportunities, homes and environmental improvements. At the same time, we're currently facing a number of significant challenges. Using the climate emergency as an impetus, we need to set a new direction for our great city. Our Future City Plan is our template for major and radical change. We need to aim for a zero carbon approach to development, build inclusive growth into the very foundation of all our plans going forward, and work alongside individuals, investors, developers, businesses, schools, communities, and charities to ensure everyone can contribute to a fresh vision for a strategy for the future. The Shaping of Our City Together document launched last week by the leader of Birmingham City Council marks the start of this conversation, setting out an inspiring vision and strategy for central Birmingham, one that creates a fair, inclusive and green place to benefit all. The ambition will be delivered by 6 key themes: a city of growth for all, where we look for that opportunity and potential beyond the city centre core, beyond that ring road, them opportunities for investment and development. A city of nature, where we build new green infrastructure, if that be parks, green spaces or green networks, but it's also repositioning both our existing green and blue network in terms of health and well-being and amenity for the good people of Birmingham. It's about a city of centres, them centres that are on the fringes of the city centre core. What are them opportunities of the potential for investment and development in terms of our growth strategy going forward? And aligned with that is the city of connections, reinforcing them connections to them centres outside the ring road back into the city centre core in terms of walking, cycling, good public transport, in terms of sprint and metro. But it's also a city of heritage and innovation, about how we reposition and repurpose both our physical and social built environment, not just in terms of listed buildings or locally listed buildings, but the fabric that makes Birmingham, that is aligned with innovation and technology, and how Birmingham becomes that leader in terms of the smart city agenda. It's also a city of layers, how Birmingham celebrates its cultural diversity, how we bang that drum, how we promote our cultural cultural diversity, both past, present and future. Our ambition is to physically grow the reach of the city centre beyond that ring road and out to the communities beyond. That will result in major new developments, rapidly growing the number of good quality homes, improved connections and public transport, and access to good quality education and good quality jobs. The scale of our ambition is radical. That includes the remodelling of the ring road into a ring of green spaces known as the Birmingham Greenway. To rethink the retail core and encourage a wider, diverse range of businesses and leisure opportunities around a park at the heart of our city centre core that we're calling the Birmingham Park Birmingham. And to expand Digbeth's creative vitality and celebrate our cultural diversity with a new cultural quarter, complemented potentially by a new film studio complex and a museum of science and industry. But it's also how we rethink the buildings around High Speed 2, Curzon Station, and provide a world-class mixed-use development and knowledge quarter known as Millennium Place, the front door to our city, that first impression when you arrive in our great city. And finally, how to use our property portfolio in a different way to help accelerate the delivery of our ambitions in order that no one gets left behind. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Simon. Really exciting plans for the city. Looking forward to seeing the next iteration of this in terms of how we deliver what is a great vision and ambition for the city. I'd like us to move now into the panel discussion if we can. But before we do that, I just want to remind our audience to please submit your questions for the Q&A later. I think first of all, if we can start with Councillor Ian Ward. Question that I'd like to put to you, Ian, is how does the future city plan sit within wider ambitions for Birmingham?
Thanks, Asha. Well, I think as Simon has just articulated there superbly, really, the future city plan sets out our ambitions for Birmingham going forward. It really sets a very, very high bar. But it's not the only strategy that we're working to in Birmingham. Yes, it will grow our city centre, spread that growth and wealth over the inner ring road into the surrounding neighbourhoods, which are some of the most deprived neighbourhoods in the city, and we need to share growth with those deprived communities. But it sits alongside also our local centre strategy, which is how we will develop local centres right across the city. So we do ensure that the growth and wealth we create is truly inclusive. And we want to create 15-minute neighbourhoods across Birmingham so that everybody is within 15 minutes walk or 15 minutes cycling of everything they might need. And we also have an ambitious plan for the east of Birmingham, which contains one of the most deprived constituencies in the city, the constituency of Hodge Hill. Our East Birmingham strategy will look to transform the whole of the east of Birmingham and rides on the back, if you'll excuse the pun, of the metro line that we're building that will link the high-speed rail terminal in the centre of Birmingham with the high-speed rail station out at the airport and the NEC. What we also have to recognise is that current pandemic has had a profound impact on the city and our residents. So we need to build a shared vision for the city as we go forward, and Simon has really set that out in the future city plan. But I'd like to sum that up really in 3 words. We need to create a cleaner, greener and fairer Birmingham going forward. The pandemic itself has exposed inequalities, hidden inequalities that were hidden in plain sight, really, that we need to address going forward. And I think we have the opportunity to use the climate emergency, and Birmingham set again a very ambitious target of attempting to be carbon neutral by 2030, or as soon after that as we can achieve it. So well ahead of the ambition set by the government. But I believe we can use that to create that greener Birmingham and create new jobs, new industries that we need to link our deprived communities to so that they can benefit from that growth. And we create, as you saw in Simon's slides, a greener city, a city where there are more spaces for people to relax and be at leisure in green space, including a new park in the city centre, so that we have a more livable and attractive environment for all of our citizens in the future. And then finally, let's not forget that many of the strengths that we had as a city going into this pandemic, we do retain as we begin to recover and emerge from the other side. So HS2 is still happening, still drive a lot of growth and create a lot of homes, helping to meet our housing need in the future. Commonwealth Games next year, every chance now that's going to be the first major multi-sporting event the world sees coming out of the pandemic. And we've got a fantastic opportunity to showcase our city and our people to the entirety of the world as a result of the Commonwealth Games and benefit from the growth that that will deliver for the city as well. And we're still working, of course, on relocating government departments out of Whitehall into Birmingham. I know that's going on across the whole of the country, but we have ambitions also here in Birmingham to see Whitehall departments sit alongside PwC, HSBC, who we've attracted to this city through the record levels of investment that Simon was talking about in his presentation. So I think the future city plan is vitally important to the future of our city. It really sets out our ambitions in a big way, and we're keen to engage with all of our partners and stakeholders over that plan to ensure that it is truly owned by all of our people across the city of Birmingham. Thank you.
That's great, Ian. Thank you. Really positive and exciting. So thank you very much for that. And I think the key is clearly articulated. So that's very much appreciated. I think certainly the audience will welcome that. I personally do. If I can head to our second question now for our panel, and I'll aim this at Beck and Rob. As developers, how does the future city plan affect your approach to deploying investment in the long term? So I'll start with Beck.
Yeah, so I guess as a developer, what you really want to see is it's never just about you and the thing or the place that you're creating. It's all about the broader community and the aspiration of a city. And so when you're investing significant capital from a Lendlease perspective, we want to see that is going to be appreciated and will fit with a broader city and actually will be successful and deliver what the community aspires to as well. So fundamental really is ambition. And I think, you know, I'm lucky enough to live fairly locally to Birmingham, and it has it in spades. It's a hugely ambitious city. And that, as I think Ian has sort of brought through and Simon in the plan, you can see how that comes off the page. It's not just about here's some nice slides. The passion comes across. And then the other thing from my perspective, it's great to have that, but you really need to see delivery. And so I think the fact that the plan is an evolution on an existing plan, it shows how things have progressed, and it really builds on a fair amount of success in the last few years in delivery, gives confidence in making future investment, that actually we can work together in partnership with the council and the broader community and city to make things happen. So those two things, I think, really it's fundamental to it.
Unmute myself. Thank you, Beck. And Rob, could I same question to you, please?
Yeah, I agree with much of what Becca said then, and I think you know, the 2040 vision is all about that ambition, isn't it? And I think, you know, working with the city, seeing that ambition, it gives organisations like Bruntwood the confidence to continue our investment. And we are long-term investors. I mean, we're regional investors, but we invest in our cities in which we partake, in which Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds and Birmingham for the long term, and we generally do that on a partnership level. So what we want to be seeing is that ambition, that ability to work with the city and others to help create that, to help deliver on those ambitions. But at the same time, we want to be part of the solution that's really going to see our cities thrive as we move to the future, and deals with and help deal with many of the challenges that we face, particularly around social deprivation. And you know, Ian's talked about that it's, you know, whilst the city centre's kind of boomed over recent years, there are certain sections of the city that undoubtedly have not benefited as much as they should. So it's great to see that the plan is starting to address much of that, and we want to be part of that. We know we've got issues around training and skills, and working with partners, particularly with the universities, as we're doing in the Knowledge Quarter and the Birmingham Health Campus. You know, we hope to be part of that solution and building those skills, whilst we're investing in the physical assets and then we're running the physical assets. It's not just about that; it's far beyond that, and kind of aligning that with our key strengths. Our world-class universities, the strengths have been identified through a lot of the work that West Midlands Growth Company have done around innovation, around fintech potential, and technology driving the prospects and the future development of the city is really encouraging. So we're here to continue our investment. You know, I've been leading the helm here for Bruntwood for about 12 years now, and it's a real renaissance. And you know, thinking about in 20 years' time, I won't be around then, 2040, but seeing that plan, that ambition to get to, you know, a true world-class city, what one of note was, it's just fantastic to be part of that. It would be fantastic to be part of that journey.
Thank you, Rob. That's great. Thank you, Beck, as well. If I can move on to the next question for a minute, and I'm addressing this to Councillor Ward and Simon. What next for the Birmingham vision, and how can real estate be involved?
Shall I pick that up?
Yeah.
I do think, just to come back to a point that Beck was making, I do think we have to ensure that we deliver, that it is about delivery going forward. It's all well and good having the plans, but if you don't deliver on them, you don't achieve very much. I think Birmingham's got a long track record of success through public-private partnership, and it's important that we continue that going forward, with the public sector putting the infrastructure in that gives them the confidence of the private sector to invest. But of course, also the City Council is a developer as well, and we are making changes within the organisation, City Council, to ensure that we can increase our own pace of delivery, to ensure that we are contributing to that growth of the city alongside our private sector partners. And having said all of that, Asha, I've forgotten your question.
No, you started answering it. The question was, what next for the Birmingham vision, and how can real estate get involved or be involved?
Yeah, and as I've been saying, we've got a track record of public-private partnerships, so we do want to be involving the private sector in these plans, and indeed we want them to feel ownership of the plan as well, and ensure that they are genuine partners. It is, after all, for all of us, for whatever reason we are in the city, Birmingham is our city, and so we need to be building its future and shaping the future for the benefit of all of our citizens. But I think it also helps that the Future City Plan builds upon the Big City Plan. And of course, the Big City Plan was a plan of its time that came forward in 2010. And now with this plan, 10 years later, taking us through the next 20 years, this, I think, very much builds upon what we're going through at the moment. So how we respond to the pandemic and how we respond to the climate emergency. So building a green future for the city, but also ensuring that the growth that we create is genuinely inclusive and we don't leave people behind. I think there's a lot of evidence now from around the world that the more inequality you have in a society, the less successful you are. So we've got to ensure that all of our citizens have a stake in the future of the city, and we build a fairer Birmingham, a more equal Birmingham, so that we can enjoy success and further growth into the future. At that point, I think I'll pass over to Simon.
Yeah, great. No, that's helpful. Thank you, Ian. Simon.
Yeah, just to build on that, I mean, the plan was launched last Tuesday, and we're now out for a 8-week consultation period. And what we're wanting to do is to say to, colleagues and people who've got an interest in Birmingham, if they live or work or play there, is to actually have their say. That's what we want now. We want people to actually, in collaboration with us, and as the leader said, it's about shaping our city together. What we're not doing is actually going away working away for 18 months or whatever it is, and then come out with a plan. We really want the built environment and communities to actually tell us what they see from their experience, because as the leader says, what's absolutely key is then that delivery piece. You know, it's all very well for me to draw a few lines on a plan and a narrative, but what's really important for the council is that we deliver that, and we look at them vehicles and them mechanisms to do that. And part of that thinking is that, as I said in the introduction, is about how does Birmingham look at its portfolio in a different way? You know, can we actually use that portfolio to kickstart projects, to kickstart investment, to get some of these schemes up and running, that then we can spread that wealth to areas of outside that city core that would benefit from that. So that's the whole intention, and our door's wide open. Asha, we really want people that are listening in today to get in touch with us and say, look, we think this is a good idea or a bad idea, and this is how we think you can deliver it, and we want to help. And it's happening already, like with Rob and other colleagues and Beck, saying that, they want to engage in this process, and we want to learn from their experience, because there's no point having something at the end of the day that doesn't deliver. We have to deliver going forward.
Thank you for that, Simon. And to the audience, you heard it here. So let's get engaging with our local authority. Thank you very much. If I can move on to our next question, and I'm going to aim this at Beck. Question was, could you elaborate on the role of the Commonwealth Games and other key development projects like Smithfield in future-proofing Birmingham's economy? It's a toughie.
I think so. So what I really admire about Birmingham is that it's got a huge ambition to be an international city, and its ambition isn't just to be, a big city in the UK and really important. It's actually really aspiring to push onto the global stage and move forwards. And I think that probably comes a lot if you look at the demographics. It's a very young city. I think it's probably still got the title of the youngest city in Europe. And that energy to think around the world as a whole. And so I look at events like the Commonwealth Games, and I think they're a fantastic opportunity to really celebrate all the cultural diversity, all the skills that Birmingham has, and push it into that internationalist arena much more. And I think probably everyone's sick of seeing our CGI of Smithfield with all the flags on for the Commonwealth Games, but the point is around really sitting on an international stage and sort of raising your ambition as to where you want to be, and making that happen. So I think where schemes like Smithfield, which is right in the centre, and events like the Commonwealth Games can come together is on just setting that ambition for the younger generations and the existing communities to get the skills, to have the energy, to have that passion, and to really drive that you can do it and you can stand out there. And the phrase around the workshop of the world didn't come from nothing. There's a huge amount of skills in Birmingham and the wider region, and events like this and developments like Smithfield allow us to push and showcase those. And I think that then hopefully, if we can get the mechanisms right that I think Ian and Simon have alluded to, over sharing and working through how everyone can benefit, there's a huge opportunity for the future of the city.
Thank you, Beck. That's great. I like that phrase. Okay, I'm going to move on to Rob with another question. What role will the knowledge economy and knowledge clusters play in the city's future? I think you touched on it earlier, but could you spend a bit more time on that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for a successful city, it has to be knowledge-based. Innovative industry is driving successful economies. We need to be a successful economy. Therefore, we need to embrace a knowledge-based economy, and it's great that Bruntwood are playing their part in that. We've got investments taking place in Innovation Birmingham, which we acquired just 3 years ago from the City Council. We're now working with the City Council and developing the vision along with 10 other partners, which includes the universities, all 3 universities actually in that part of town, and that ambition to create a knowledge cluster based economy on the cusp of high speed 2 is one hell of an opportunity for us, and an ability for the universities there to really leverage their IP to retain much of the talent that they're developing, but also an opportunity to reach out to some of the socially deprived areas in the city and start thinking about how we include them in that journey. What encourages us as Bruntwood is that it is a collaborative approach, and the city have got a very clear vision about what they want to see happen here. And it's about us playing our part and everybody else playing our part with that. And the same is true as the Birmingham Life Sciences campus that we'll be. We've got a planning permission in to develop that in partnership with Legal and General through SciTech, but also University of Birmingham and Birmingham Health Partners to create a new life sciences campus. And we'll begin commencing work on that development this year, which will see 650,000 square foot over the next 5 or 6 years of life sciences campus take shape. And the same is true there. You know, we've got fantastic developments taking place and research taking place at the University Hospital and the university, and that needs to be leveraged and create and retain those jobs that I talked about. If we do all of that, we also create a magnet for inward investment. So by building these resources, by developing our own industry, our own spin-outs from these universities, it will no doubt be an attractor for a lot of inward investment. So it's definitely the right strategy. It's fantastic that the city, the combined authority, the LEP, and everybody else is getting behind that, as well as the universities. And it's going to be transformational, I believe, for the city of Birmingham.
Thank you, Rob. That's great. That's very succinct and positive. And you know, as a Brummie, I see some of those developments going on, and it's very heartwarming to see it. Okay, I'm going to go to our sixth and final question for this panel session. I'm going to put the question out, and then I think I'll ask the panelists who would like to sort of take a stab at it first. So the question is, what role will the ESG sustainability agenda play in facilitating Birmingham's economic recovery and sustainability targets? I mean, there is a strong emphasis there on economic recovery, but let's pick this up from a sustainability point of view. Shall we start with Simon?
Yeah, I mean, the climate crisis agenda, you know, is paramount to what we do with all of this. It's at the forefront of our plan going forward. You know, it's key to that, and Birmingham will not be tokenistic in its response to it either. You know, we will be delivering, as the leader said earlier on, you know, towards that vision by 2030, and it's part of that, how we go forward with that real estate, how we go forward with that, you know, regeneration and development of our city beyond the ring road, as I said earlier, and it's more than just, you know, that green infrastructure. It's about also our buildings as well. You know, the buildings that we're going to be building now, we have to deliver more houses a lot quicker and of a high quality, but they can't fall short of that green agenda either. You know, it has to be embedded now in that design philosophy in terms of either its materiality, etc., but also about that sort of health and well-being agenda as well, that's plugged into that. You know, what COVID has shown us and really sort of exaggerated in terms of that climate agenda, that they do go hand in hand. You know, it is about that resilience, and it should really be seen as an agent for change. You know, it's that opportunity. What it's done is brought us all closer together. You know, we're closer together in this virtual world, and we all had them same ambitions. I was at an event yesterday, and everyone was talking about exactly the same things about that green credentials and going forward. And we're committed to that as a council. You know, and through that plan, that commitment will run all the way through, not just in this plan, but in policy that follows going forward.
Thank you, Simon. Can I put that question to Councillor Ward now?
Well, yeah, if I just add to what Simon has said, I think we've got the obvious challenge of how do we build at a zero carbon level going forward. But we've got what I think is an even larger challenge in how do we retrofit the existing properties right across the city to ensure that they become as close to carbon neutral as we can get them as well. And that is a huge challenge, which will also lead to the creation of thousands of jobs if we can get it right. And as Simon said, this agenda needs to run through everything that we do, and we mustn't lose sight that in delivering the green agenda, we've got to make sure that that transition is just and fair for all of our people. We don't want to further impoverish already deprived communities. And just to pick up the comment in the chat from Christopher Molyneux, we've got an issue that's connected to that around homelessness. Our need for housing in the city is astronomical going forward. We've got to build an additional 90,000 units in the period through to 2031. We can only fit some 56,000 of those inside the city boundary. So you can see if we can't meet this challenge, we are going to increase homelessness, not reduce it. So the plan that Simon presented talks about how we're going to push density, and we will increase height on the key routes in and out of the city in order that we can move towards meeting this housing need. And where we've got an even more acute challenge is in ensuring that we deliver enough affordable housing for the city. So our target's 35%. We're currently only delivering, I say only, it's still significant, 24% affordable housing across all of our developments. So we've got to come up with a plan that increases the delivery of affordable right across the city. And we've got to ensure through that future city plan that the city centre itself is a place where families want to go. Because much of the change that we've made over the last 20, 25 years has resulted in families having a feeling that the city centre is not for them, it's too expensive, it's about businessmen, etc., etc. So one of the key deliveries of our future city plan is to ensure we do bring families back into the city and ensure that, as I've been saying, we have an inclusive city where all communities and all people feel they have a stake.
Thank you for that, Ian. That's a very passionate response, and I resonate with it very much. Can I put the question to Rob and then followed by Beck? And we've probably just got a few minutes before we move into the next session. Rob. Yeah,
I just want to pick on something that Councillor Ian Ward talked about, and talked about, you know, all very well developing new build carbon neutral buildings, but there's an awful lot of existing stock that we need to develop technology for in order to retrofit solutions to allow those to play their part in the emissions targeting that we've set ourselves. And I know, you know, talking with Bruntwood, we made a commitment to all our new build development to be net zero carbon by 2030, but our existing portfolio to be net zero carbon by 2050. And that's not no easy task. So we're working with Ramboll at the moment, just looking at a couple of buildings where we're looking at the technologies we can employ to allow us to do that. So it's a real commitment from us. In terms of new build, you know, clearly we want to be bringing further investment into Birmingham, and I've been working with Simon in recent months looking at a strategically located development site in the city centre. Again, working with Ramboll, but also Glenn Howell's architects, just thinking about how we develop that opportunity to deliver exactly that. And it was great to see the design principle consultation, which I think ends this week, Simon, doesn't it? And we've been using a lot of what was in that as a sort of a guide in terms of what we're looking to deliver. And the technology does exist. You know, we're looking at hybrid frame of wood and steel and concrete, looking at hooking into the local district heating systems. So the technologies are there if you set that ambition to begin with. And it's one of the things that Beck talked about, is ambition is everything. And it's something I think collectively we know we have to tackle. The other thing I'd like to say about this as well, there is a market for it. You know, if you create this product, you know, forward-thinking organisations, the type of organisations we want to be attracting to the city and seeing grow in the city, want to be occupying this sort of space. So commercially it works. Commercially it makes sense as well. So it works from both ends as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Great, thank you, Rob, for that. And Beck, if I can give you a minute to respond as well.
Yeah, I think it's just a really good example of how all of the things we probably talked about in different parts of this chat can come together to solve a massive crisis. So the things that Rob's doing around innovation and kind of how we think our way out of problems, the fact that, you know, Birmingham and the West Midlands has a lot of practical skills on getting stuff done and making things, if we bring all that together in the ways in which we do create the buildings of the future and make the buildings we have now future proofed, then not only will that solve our problems and help us for the future, but it's something that I think, as Rob alluded to, it can be a very commercially prosperous thing for the region. And so not only will people want to hopefully come to the city, but actually that it may be technologies and solutions that we can export globally. So that thinking and all the kind of knowledge economy that we're developing in the city is certainly, from my perspective, I see the activities I'm doing as a kind of demander and supplier. It's a kind of interrelationship of how we get better collectively. And all of that can kind of push our global ambitions for the city.
Great. Thank you, Beck. Okay, well, we're going to move into the audience Q&A. So I just want to start by thanking the panel for their insights and an interesting discussion. So thank you. I'm just going to pull up the questions now and have a look at what's come through. And I'll take them in the order they're coming in, but please, if I can ask the audience to put further questions into the chat. The first one has come through, and Councillor Ward did start to touch on it, but I'll open it up. Has tackling homelessness and affordable housing provision been factored into this grand plan? Shall I start with Simon on that?
Yeah, as I alluded to, we've got to build more homes a lot faster and of a quality as well, and there are areas within Birmingham that suffer from fuel poverty, and what we have to do is address that in how we go forward. We build them houses that are fit for that purpose. Both Rob and Beck talk about the retrofit, which is yet a very, very important agenda and a difficult agenda, but then it's that agenda about the houses that we've now built for the future. How do they tick them boxes as well, that get people onto that housing ladder, but then are also not under any pressure in terms of that fuel poverty agenda going forward. And again, homelessness again, it's about how we embrace all aspects of our city, as the leader touched on. It's about not just those that are within homes or within business or within retail, etc. It's about the people of Birmingham, and what we mean by that is all the people of Birmingham. And I know it's a big political agenda that I'm sure the leader will go into a bit more detail on. Thank
you, Simon. I'm going to skip to another question and then I'll come back to what you just said, Simon. So if I can pick up the question on how do you see COVID impacting the city centre office market in terms of development, and do you see the re-emergence of city living? I'd like to put that to Councillor Ward, and then perhaps I would like to put that to Rob as well.
Well, I think this is the question people have been asking throughout the pandemic, haven't they? As we've all discovered that it's possible to work virtually across these sorts of platforms. But I would just go back to the first lockdown. It began, didn't it, on March the 23rd and ran through till the beginning of June, I think. And I know that as we got through April, I was desperate to get back to the office. I had quite enough of what I by then ceased to be calling working from home and more living at work. And so I don't think, I've been working now from home since Christmas. I haven't been back to the office since Christmas because of the current lockdown. But I think as we recover from the pandemic and we emerge from these restrictions, I don't see that people will be working from home 5 days a week. They may work 1 day from home, maybe 2 days from home. I think there'll be that split between some days in the office, maybe some days at home, but I think people are desperate for that interaction and that creativity you get from working closely with other people. And I think businesses will want that creativity as well. It's the only way we're going to get back to meaningful levels of growth. So I do think there'll be a future role for office space in city centres, certainly in Birmingham. We may see some of it repurposed for that kind of creative thinking I've just spoken about. And I also think that there'll be a continued ongoing demand for city centre living because coming out of the pandemic again, well, to start off with, before we went into the pandemic, the food and beverage offer in Birmingham city centre was becoming really, really fantastic. It was great place to spend an evening after work, or to come out with friends and possibly family of a weekend. So I still see we'll return to that, and we'll grow an even more fantastic food and beverage offer, and there'll be that demand for people, whether they be people who are retiring and want to be closer to entertainment, or whether they be young professionals with a first home who want to live in a vibrant and a creative place like the centre of Birmingham. So I think both will come back after the pandemic. I'm really confident of that.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ward. Can I put that question to Rob and then Beck, please?
Yeah, I think Ian's right. You know, undoubtedly, a lot of organisations are going to be thinking the return is going to offer opportunity to work more flexibly for a lot of their people, and that's only a good thing, isn't it? We're already moving down that road, but the pandemic's just accelerated that particular trend. But I think we need to be mindful of the fact that working from home doesn't work for everybody, and there are vast swathes of our society where it's a real challenge, particularly for the younger generations, those that are looking to kickstart their careers. Just thinking about, you come from a multi-generational home, you're trying to find somewhere safe and productive in which to work. Have you got a good enough connection? Have you got the relevant IT infrastructure, for example? I know Simon had to borrow his son's laptop today, for example. So, there are things like that really need to be considered. And when you think about the function of the office, you think about how you develop culture, how you develop talent. A lot of that is done in a work environment. There's so much you can do from home, but you can't do everything. My personal take on it, and I've written quite extensively on this, is that the city centres are still really well placed to deliver the needs of the business, but business are going to be looking for more flexibility in terms of how they deliver their accommodation. But also they're going to be looking for quality, and they're going to be looking to leverage more out of their workspace. So they're going to be thinking more about what does the workspace do for us. So they're going to be thinking more carefully about what it delivers, so the type of working environments, so flexibility in working environments, bringing whole teams together, thinking about wellness, thinking about development of careers and skills, and sorts of things. I also think the regional cities, particularly Birmingham, are well placed, because a lot of builders are thinking resilience, well, success. And as a consequence, I think London probably has a bigger problem than we do, and I think places like Birmingham have a real opportunity in delivering that. And you think about what Birmingham has to offer in terms of affordability, livability, quality of life you can have here. It's got something to say, hasn't it? So I think for these reasons, I'm pretty confident about our return, and like Ian, I'm desperate to get back, and having talked to a lot of my contacts, colleagues, and everybody else, this particular lockdown has been hard, hasn't it? Yeah.
Thank you, Rob. I think we all feel the same way. I'm just going to ask Beck if she can spend a minute thinking about that as well. Share your views.
Yeah, I'll probably add a slightly different spin on. I think there's a massive opportunity around how the city centre kind of workplaces are going to relate to the local centre workplaces, and probably quite a lot of those workplaces in the local centres don't quite exist at the moment, and the city centre ones maybe have got to change and up the game. So I think if you kind of work on the basis that, as everyone said, probably 5 days at home isn't sustainable, people will want to come back into the city centre. But we're seeing in our global research a lot of real kind of don't want to lose the benefits of the local connections I've made through this process, I think I'll probably call it, to people in my neighbourhood who I can't obviously go up and touch and whatever, but I know them better. Community has formed in a different way, and that a lot of kind of keenness for that to extend not just to the social environment, but to actually to the work environment to a degree as well. And what interesting research around what companies might gain from that kind of interaction and those environments in which it takes place. So, what do I think out of all that? I think if you're, in the city centre, then absolutely focus. I think Rob said it, and everyone else is around flexibility. But that means it's not just around, okay, well, you might have a more flexible lease, etc. I think we're going to have to think massively about technology. For anyone who has been at home trying to partake in a video call with people in the office, current technology, even the best systems are really not good enough. People can't move around. It doesn't work, and it doesn't feel inclusive. You're back in that old world where if you're at home, you might as well not be there because it's just a waste of time. You can't say anything. So upping the game on that and how that technology is consumed. So will every business be able to afford to invest in that? Well, maybe the landlords will put it in. How all that works, massive opportunity and kind of foresighting on that. And then the other part, which I think kind of we're seeing a lot of research coming from Asia around this, is slightly counterintuitive, but in order to be super flexible, you have to be super organized. So what you can't have is, you say to everyone in your organization, yeah, do what you want, be in on Monday, not in on Tuesday, whatever, because it just is an absolute car crash. Everyone, you can't get quality, productive collaboration. So I think companies and organizations have to think a little bit about the structure of their routine to then allow everyone to have greater flexibility within that structure and get the best out of the learnings from this experience.
Thank you, Beck. That's it's good to get a different perspective and take on it as well. I'm going to keep the theme of digital going and pick up the question, and I'd like to start with Simon, if I can, and then I'll follow through. The question is: have you had to adapt the consultation process in light of the pandemic to ensure all voices and communities are being heard, even in the more digitally deprived areas? Simon, could you? Thank you.
A really, really good question, and there's obviously been a challenge for probably not just us and other local authorities and other businesses, and and it's really sort of echoing what both Beck and Rob said in terms of that virtual world. It's difficult because not everyone's got access to that. Everyone's got a different environment that they're living from at the moment on there. And yet we have adapted that. We have set up a engagement strategy on that. It's not as though that we can go out to libraries and places like that anymore and have staff there with flyers and printed documents because we just can't. So we've got an engagement strategy set up with a series of webinars, and what we're asking to do as well, where we're going out with these webinars, is that we're asking the community, investors and developers to take ownership of these as well, to take their own ownership, to actually go back to their workplaces or their homes or their communities and actually say, this is the theme. Let's talk about that theme, and then come back to Birmingham about what their views and thoughts are. So, and really, if you access our council website and put in our future city plan, it's all there about how you can do that engagement. But what we are trying to do in a different way is to get that message out there, but also give that ownership to those people out there to actually come back to us. And if that's in a electronic format or a written format, it doesn't matter, but that's our engagement at the moment, how we're going forward with it. And to date, it's worked. And again, as we said earlier, this is a radical plan. It's also a radical engagement, a collaboration. It is about ownership and then coming back to us with that.
Great, thank you, Simon. Could I ask the question of Councillor Ward as well, from your perspective, in where you hope, digitally deprived areas are something we're all worried about. Could you respond to that question?
Yes, and I think it's always been difficult reaching the more deprived communities, particularly on these big strategic plans. The development plan is for any local authority. It's always a challenge to try and engage with the different communities. They tend not to become interested until suddenly there's a planning application near where they live, and then they're suddenly wanting to know, well, how did this get in the plan? So it's always been a challenge, I think, to do this, and that's been heightened through the last 10 months with various tiers of lockdowns, etc., etc. But I think there is some encouragement for the future on engagement, because interestingly, Birmingham being a young city is particularly pertinent for us. Young people are very much engaged on the climate emergency. and the need to reduce CO2 emissions. And what I'm seeing increasingly now is with plans such as the Future City Plan, young people are suddenly interested in this. It's suddenly grabbing their attention because they're wanting to answer that question, or they're wanting us to answer the question, what in this plan is going to help save the planet and deliver a green agenda for the future? And so that's kind of leads to this interesting dynamic where we're being pushed by young people to be more radical in our approach, because 2030, it's still not quick enough. So what more can you do? And I think that's interesting for the future. And it's also interesting in the world of politics for the future, the way that young people seem to be getting engaged on these agendas, which of course, ultimately require a political answer.
Thank you, Councillor Ward, that's helpful. Can I put this to Beck again, just sort of following from what you said in the previous response, Beck, just to talk a little bit about what Councillor Ward just said around young people and the influence and the digital areas. Could you add a few more words?
Yeah, I think I agree with Ian. It's definitely something that really does engage with younger generations around the environmental aspects. I think just the technical perspective, we're probably seeing actually some different strands around, definitely, you know, the digital age, younger people engaging with that, kind of polls, smartphones, all the kind of stuff you would expect. Great. We're also seeing a massive resurgence, particularly on maybe more sensitive matters, more local consultations on the telephone. So that thing that we've kind of like all forgotten, but does actually exist. And particularly around inclusivity, which I think is the point Ian raised as well. That really is something that I think we have probably slightly forgotten about, if I'm honest. And I think through this pandemic, it's been very noticeable that we've had feedback around bringing generations together. The telephone is enabling us to reach people who I think we would miss. And then the other point that has definitely got us thinking, and we're trying to think if there's a way we can do a bit more of a structured research approach on it, is the social inclusivity point. So that telephone conversation about what you might be thinking around development plans might be the only conversation that person's had all week. And the interaction of your role and how that fits. And then what we're finding with some of our younger consultees is they're actually really interested in how are you getting to other people then? You know, what are you doing about this? And wanting to be part of the methodology of consultation, not just part of the actual consultation. So it's a hugely interesting topic. I don't have the answers. I'm definitely, you know, we're just working through what we're seeing. I think we're in observation and trial mode, but it's definitely feeling like the pandemic has shifted that world of how do you get people's views and engagement on, you know, a significant way. And that's certainly something I don't want to lose when hopefully we're not all stuck in our homes.
Yeah, very much so. Thank you, Beck. I'm just going to put a question to Rob, just sort of following that theme through and saying, with the ever-changing technology and occupier needs, how can you future-proof science tech developments?
Very good question. Well, we've had that challenge actually, because we're bringing forward a new build development over at Innovation Birmingham, Enterprise Wharf, 130,000 square foot. In fact, actually, Arup have been helping us in terms of that very question. So it's about enabling that building so you can retrofit, you can put the technology in as it's developed. I think it's probably the key answer to that. Flexibility, we've already talked about, so flexibility in floor plates, flexibility in terms of how people occupy is going to be key. Creating the right types of environment that people feel comfortable in. So thinking very carefully about the external environment, whether you put roof gardens in so people can work in a different way. I think those are the kind of things that we need to be considered. But ultimately, it's about connecting that building both physically, so people can get to it through active transport, not just you know, with the car, the bus, or the tram. But digitally connected as well. So, you know, we've got this great opportunity that's 5G, haven't we, for the region. So thinking very carefully about how we embed 5G technology into our buildings, very high frequency. So you can't just expect it to penetrate your building. You need to be building that infrastructure in. So it's those kind of things. And it's an ever-changing picture, you know. Technology, 30 years ago, I started in this business. It was pretty basic what we did, and we just turned out that, you know, the same product pretty much. And then over the last 10 years, everything's changed, and it's changing at a more rapid pace. So we have a duty, if we want to be successful, to continue to be at the forefront of that technology, working with the types, you know, with your likes of Arups and of this world to help us maintain that competitive edge.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for mentioning us as well. I think sadly we're coming to the end of our session now, but I just want to first of all thank our panelists for joining us today and taking time out of your busy schedules and sharing your perspectives. They've been really insightful. And thank you, Simon, for presenting the Future City Plan as well. It's very exciting, and I look forward to seeing it being realised. And I want to thank the audience for joining us and for sharing your questions with us. And as I mentioned at the start of the session, there are further webinars throughout the week where you will hear from local city mayors and leaders, as you have done today for Birmingham, and the strategies for driving growth across the UK. So certainly worth attending some of the others. I think tomorrow at 10 o'clock is Scotland's session, where they'll be laying out their economic growth strategy and its drive to the net zero in the lead up to COP26. So that's worth a follow-up if anyone is interested. And as I said earlier, recordings of the summit sessions and the details of the London Real Estate Forum in September can be found at lraef.co.uk, and I'm sure it'll be on the website. We are requested to ask if people could do a quick event pop-up poll, which will follow shortly. And if you can take a moment to put your feedback in there, we would appreciate it. I just want to say again to our panelists, thank you so much for a very interesting and insightful conversation. And thank you to our audience for the questions they put to us. And I'd like to say good afternoon and have a good rest of the day.